This is an interview with Ruth Walker. It is being conducted and taped by Karen Harrigan and Ellie Gooch in Ruth's home, which is located at the corner of Pleasant and Main Street. It is Saturday afternoon, October 29th, 1994. First of all, Karen and I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you, Ruth. Perhaps we should start off by you telling us a little bit about the early days you remember when you were born out in Factory Village country.
Yeah. Well, I was born way out farther out towards what they called Canada at the time. I don't remember it. And we moved from there before I can remember any part about it. But we moved to several different places where my father worked, I suppose. I remember little about that.
Right.
But what I do remember was when we finally were at the farm, what is now known as the Ducray place.
Yes.
And that's just above Factory Village. And that's where I started school. Just a small school, but it was a nice place to be. Used to be a little woolen mill there, and several things going on.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. And made nice, long-lasting friends there.
Right.
Yeah. Then when I was 8 years old, my father died, and then we moved into the town and lived on Colby Street. Yeah.
That must have been quite a change for you.
It was. It was.
So that was, you kind of went to high school and then you got married.
Yeah, I managed to get through grammar school. Went to high school, yeah. Yeah. No, I was a little, I remember marching. We always had different parades the different years. And they had the school time for graduation, and the different classes would have a parade. And in the beginning, I was in the very front. So one of the little ones. By the time I graduated, I was one of the tallest. So I grew up through high school.
Well, of course, when we talk to you, Ruth, we always think about the old Jax Theatre.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember going way back, days before the Jax Theatre?
Well, I remember, yes, as I was a girl, probably in grammar school, in the first high school, and they used to have road shows. They used to call them road shows.
Road shows.
But they would come and put on plays. They might come for 3 or 4 days, have a different play each night. And of course, I just loved it.
You loved that.
And they'd have that at the town hall. Then I would go home, and I would get all my friends together up in the barn we had and put on the plays I'd seen the night before.
No wonder you liked your job at the theater. Just like play. Yeah. Then we always hear about the old Halcyon Theater. The old Halcyon Theater.
Oh, yes.
Do I pronounce it
Yes,
right?
then of course Frank Baldwin built that building, which was it was a beautiful building.
It was.
And strange to say that anybody would have a theater upstairs over a garage, because nowadays I don't suppose a fire hazard wouldn't think of doing such a thing. But it was a nice theater, had a balcony and a nice stage, and they put on plays and different things there. They had dressing rooms for the men and dressing rooms for the ladies, and beautiful curtains, draperies, and whatnot. And so if you did have something come into town, you had a place for them that you were proud of to give them. I know at the time they had a women's club here in town, and they used to sell tickets for something called as near as I can remember, it was something called a lecture series. And my mother was a dressmaker, and she used to go from place to place sewing.
Is that right?
I didn't know that. You didn't know? Oh, yes. Mm. And so she'd be at the Lombards and the Trask and the Fullers and the places all around.
The dresses.
Well, you didn't walk into a store and buy dresses where you do today. So they got print material and had them made. And so the summer when she went, my mother bought for me one of these tickets, and there'd be a long ticket, and then they'd be listed something every month, and it would be held at the Jax Theatre, and they were nice things, really, really nice things.
Would they get big crowds?
Yes.
Big turnout.
Yes.
Yeah, big turnout. And everybody.
I don't think it seated as many as Jax Theatre, but of course, late in the summertime, then we had the Chautauqua. That was in the tent.
Do you know about that, Karen?
So they had Chautauquas, and that came. So we had all kinds of things going on that
to go to and have fun.
To go to, yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were nice things. This series they used to call them lecture series. Well, they weren't lectures as you'd think of a lecture, but sometimes it might be a 4 or 5 string orchestra, like more, I won't say classical music, but it wasn't hard rock.
No.
So I don't know. We were kind of brought up on,
yes,
on some things like that. Then I went to work selling tickets at the Jax Theatre.
Is that right?
And the ticket office was downstairs. People went in, so you never saw the movie, No. People went upstairs into the movie.
You sat down on the ground floor.
Just as you went in.
Sure.
Yeah.
How old were you then? How old were you then?
That was after I was married. Just before my husband died, I started in selling tickets. And I think I can't remember how it happened. But Jack Eames became involved there, and he must have been then at the time. And he said that he thought that Colbert deserved something better than that for a theater. And that's when he started looking for a place to build.
But he originally went in down where...
Yeah, down there, Interstate Amusement Company. And so he was looking for a place to build a theater. So Sam Weeks was trying to sell in the lot over here where they built the garage in back. And at the same time, he was looking at this lot here that belonged to Mrs. Walker, my mother-in-law. And no pressure was put on him from here, I'm sure, but he apparently decided on this here. So it was built in 1939.
Mm-hmm. Well, were people kind of excited about it in Colebrook,
Well, I think so.
I bet they were.
I think so.
I know, I would.
The way they poured in,
they poured in, just poured in.
Yeah. They must have been. Because I remember opening night, and it was all very nice. Very nice.
That first movie, I see Dr. Gifford said the first movie was Love Finds Andy.
Yes. I'm not sure about that. I was trying to think what it was. About it.
Well, just to finish up with this Mr. Eames. Now, he owned a theater in Lancaster.
Not Lancaster, Littleton. And then at the one time, I think, what's the town below there? Lisbon. Lisbon.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had a summer one in Bethlehem. And the whole thing was called the Interstate Amusement Company.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was a senator at one time?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Why did he name him Jax?
I don't know, really, but I said to him once, I didn't see him too often or too much, but I think I said to him once, I think you'd have something named after yourself, for heaven's sake. So he was Jack Eames, he named it Jax Theatre.
I wondered about that. Yeah.
Later on, I don't know if I should tell this.
We haven't. So they started to build the Jax Theatre next to your house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's right where today the liquor store is.
Yes.
And
sad to say.
Well,
I don't mind putting that in.
Well, no, I was thinking that must have been kind of convenient for you to go to work there, right next door.
Yes.
Wasn't it? You could just run over,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And the building has not changed in the exterior at all. It looks just the same, doesn't it, Ruth? Except for the marquee.
The marquee's gone.
Yes.
The little picket fence is gone. A lot of the shrubbery is gone.
That is true, Ruth.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was looking at the picture in Dr. Gifford's book, and there's the little picket fence and the marquee.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was more attractive, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and the trees. But we sure are lucky the building is still there. So you were the very first manager of the Jax Theatre.
No, Charlie Hughes was manager.
Always?
Oh, I was ticket seller. I went in as ticket seller, and Charlie Hughes was manager.
All this time I had you manager.
No, not until Charlie gave up. I was manager for I've forgotten how many. I was with the whole thing, counting tickets for about 20-some years. But no, Charlie Hughes was manager when they built the new theater.
Built the new theater,
Mm-hmm.
and you were the ticket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and took the money.
And took
looked after the money.
And looked after the
Yeah.
money. And I wonder when you became manager, Ruth.
Well, Charlie and his brother started a store up the street here. And then it got to the point where I guess that he felt he wasn't earning enough of whatever, I don't know.
No.
And he was leaving, and I don't know whether he told me or somebody did that they were going to ask me, to be manager. And I said to Charlie, I can't do that. And he said, of course you can. So he gave me more support, I guess. And so it went on from there.
Well, so that must have been like in the 50s, maybe? I was trying to think when Charlie opened his store with Stewart.
I don't know.
No, but it was probably late 40s, early 50s.
Time goes so fast. I've been out of there some when you stop and think how long it's been since the theater, So it might have been, but yeah.
Well, in the theaters, I remember you sitting, it was like a little glass partition, a little hole here, and a little slot here. You could talk through the hole.
And Mr. Eames was so nice. The door that opened was right in back of me.
Right.
Was this door where you walked in. He took out one panel and put a glass in, so that if I wasn't busy, I could turn. I could look at separate the curtains. What do you call the back? But I'll separate the curtain, and I could look right on the screen. I thought that was so nice.
Very nice.
I never thought.
No, and on a slow night, I bet you did. Turn and
Yeah.
watch the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
We had lots of things happen.
funny things.
Oh, yes.
So Charlie was the manager, and you were the ticket
Mm-hmm.
person, and then you must have had somebody to show the. Did Charlie show the movies, the projection room? You know, who ran the movie machine?
Well, there were so many different ones.
They came.
Who were the first ones? I don't remember exactly. I don't know, but Willard Nugent did for a little time when George Charlie lived upstairs in the apartment right beside her, and had different ones. So that honestly,
kind of came and went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then you would have two ushers.
Yes. Yeah.
Two ushers.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I had two nice ones.
Two nice ones.
Palmer Lewis.
Wonderful.
And Lindy Purrington were two nice ones.
Yes.
And then there's he was our cop for a while.
Tom Pryor, no.
He's gone from me.
Well,
I can't think of his name that awful.
No, I don't think it's awful at all. But whoever it was nice.
Yeah, they were nice boys. Yeah.
Well, how many people could sit in that theater?
518.
518. That's a big crowd. And sometimes it would be filled to capacity.
Many times. Many times, and standing up back if you'd let them sometimes if they wanted to stand, and then standing outside waiting for a second show. There was always two shows at 7 and 9.
7 and 9.
Yeah.
Now, every day of the week.
Every day of the week.
In a matinee
on Saturday. On Saturday.
I can remember when there'd be a line right down the main street with people waiting.
Sunday nights they'd be lined up way up here.
Way up.
And some nights it'd be perhaps in the winter or sometime the weather was bad, and Mrs. Walker would say to me, "Well, you won't have many tonight, Ruth." That was when I'd be managing. She said, "Well, you won't have many tonight, Ruth." And when I get over to work, the first ones in would be from Errol. They'd come through the lodge and everything to go to the movies.
That's wonderful. Well, Ruth, you serve popcorn.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but no cold drinks. Did you have,
No.
Candy?
No.
I didn't think so.
No.
Yeah, just the popcorn.
Just popcorn. Mm-hmm.
Well, how much would it cost us to go to the movies then?
Started with 35 cents.
For an adult?
Mm-hmm.
And a child would be...
I've forgotten whether it's 10 or 15.
Yes, something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, of course...
It got up, but I can't remember how that it got up while I was there very high. It got up more than that, but I don't know.
But it must have gone up. Everything did.
I don't know whether it got up to 60 or not.
Something
Might have, yeah. And we used to first run movies out of Boston.
How did you get
the Boston was the man who did the booking for us. And he was so good that he would get us first run movies that sometimes had been shown all down through here, And sometimes a first run movie would be on percentage. And if it was on percentage, they apparently hired, I don't know who hired them, I can't remember that, but they'd have a man come who was called,
Well, it doesn't really matter.
Well, anyway, he come to check. So he stood there with his...
Oh, to get the percentage?
Oh, no, he checked so that theater didn't cheat, you see.
Is that right?
And he'd check every adult and every child that went into theater. Oh, I got to know them real well. They were nice people, but that was just a job for them, I called them, I guess you'd call them checkers.
Yeah, right.
And if it was on percentage, 9 times out of 10, somebody stood there in the lobby checking everybody that came in. Mm-hmm.
And that was on your first run, big movies.
Well,
They would do.
well, usually it was be on a bigger movie,
Yes, right,
but it would be every night that we run it, you know.
right.
So yeah.
Well, Ruth, did they Littleton Theater get the same movies as we got here? Would they stop at Littleton and then
Not
necessarily?
not necessarily.
We
No.
might. And how did you get the films up here?
They were. Well, now I can't remember the name of those people. It was a truck that just did that.
Just did that.
And they dropped those films off at night, maybe sitting outside the door there, in case there's a great big, you know. And they'd pick up, the operator would bring down the ones that were used. He'd pick up the ones to go and bring the others back.
Right.
They seemed to know somehow what ones we were supposed to have. Yeah.
Well, now tell me, is that really a true story about the Sam Weeks having 2 seats?
Well, it's strange you asked me that, because I've just been reading about some place now that they were telling how they do this for people.
To accommodate, you don't
I was
know.
just reading about it something, and I said, well, that's nothing. When they built their theater, they took off the arms somehow to make room, and the very back, it was the very back seat for Sam Weeks, because to get in. And he bought the first ticket.
And he bought the
And we framed it. It was in the office, and I was wondering the other day why that went, because we framed it, and it was in the office, the ticket.
You don't have it.
No, I don't have it, no.
Sam Weeks was a very large man.
Yeah.
And a very jovial man.
Oh, yes.
And did he run Weeks' Tavern?
Yes. That was another pretty place.
Yes, it was.
And as I say, he was the one that wanted to sell Jack Eames a piece of land out there. So he and Jack knew each other friendly.
Right.
Yeah.
But that is really a true story. I've always heard that.
Yeah, it's true.
Always heard that.
It's true. Oh.
Well, these Saturday matinees,
On Saturday.
were they the same? They were like Wild West movies that I remember going to back then. Like Gene Autry,
Well,
Roy Rogers.
Westerns.
Yes.
Westerns.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But you know, they always showed a cartoon and a newsreel, and then come in events,
Right.
and then you went on with your
Yes.
movie. Yeah.
In
Now on Saturdays, the children, you know,
Warren.
and of course, at certain times, like that is when I was manager at Christmas, or the end of the school year like that, I showed different things for the children, you know.
That would be like a little class trip.
Well,
You go to the movies.
at Christmas time, they used to send this man, I wish I could remember his name, he was so nice, they'd send him up from Littleton, and all of a sudden he rushed in like Santa Claus, and he rushed down the aisle and onto the stage, you know.
All the kids were excited.
Yeah.
Oh, I can picture
So,
that.
yeah.
Did they have cereals then? And on Saturday
Yes.
afternoon where they could.
I don't remember that so much here as I do down at the old theater. I can remember hearing people tell more. I don't know if I saw too much of them, but tell us about the perils of Pauline and
That kind of thing.
all
That
about
was before older days.
hmm Yep.
They these were black and white movies.
And you know, that's strange now. You mentioned that. I'll go back just a little bit. I remember, I was trying to remember whether it was at the Hell Center here. And they come one time and they had these cards. And they had a little, like, plastic colored thing in. And they gave them out to people to come in. You held them up like this and look at the movie to get colored.
Is that right?
And all there's going to be colored movies,
Never heard that.
you know.
Isn't that something?
I always thought I wish I'd kept those things, kept one of those things, of all the different things, you know. Somehow we don't think of it
No.
back then. We wish we kept so many things.
I remember those. What was a way of advertising the movies that were coming? Weren't they on a little piece of cardboard, and it would tell what would be coming for the week? You know, to advertise your movies, like you'd say, like Sunday, be so and so.
Do you mean mailed out?
I don't know. I don't know. Were they mailed?
Well, when I was at the Jax Theatre, here we did. We had a card this long. We put the movies, told the name of them, who was in it, and a little bit about them for every day. And we had a mailing list, and then we left a stack of them around so people could pick them up.
I remember.
Yeah.
Pick it up to take with you, and it tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you also advertise in the paper?
Always.
Always advertise.
And managed to get it on the front page, and somebody criticized. I understand now, cycle, what the idea was. I could get that, because I used to sit there and write up a little resume if I was coming.
You did the write-ups of what the movie was going to be?
Yeah, a little bit.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, did you have those giveaway nights too, where you give things away? You know, like dishes?
Not Jax Theatre, but the Halcyon did. But I didn't have much to do with that.
No, this was just you paid your money and you went to the movies.
Yeah.
And ate your popcorn.
Yeah. What a breakaway.
Now, Mrs. Walker, where was the Halcyon Theatre? The Halcyon Theatre, where was it? What building was it?
It's where Prescott Farms is.
Okay.
It was very, very pretty building. It was a lovely building. I wish I had a picture of it, the way it used to look.
And then, why did that one close? Did they wanted to build another one? Is that what it was?
He thought, Mr. Eames thought Colbert deserved something better than that, a full garage. And then he built this.
Ellie remembers those things and I don't, so I get lost.
And then we were saying the other things that we were talking about was more like an open air entertainment. The Chautauqua was more. They've just traveled through.
Yes. They used to come and stay. They might stay. I don't know. Maybe stay a week with different things, you know. It was called a Chautauqua. It was a form of entertainment for people.
Right.
You know.
And under a tent?
Yes.
No building. No building, just a tent. Karen was asking, and I wasn't sure. Yep. Well,
I'm going to look that word up the dictionary someday.
Well, I've got the spelling here, so I'll
see if it tells you what
it is. Yeah, I think it. I don't remember just where we left off. I don't remember where we left off. Do you? Oh, it's on the colored movies, wasn't it? Yeah, you were talking about seeing through the colored tinted glass. Well, then we eventually did get colored movies.
Yeah, eventually.
Was there a time, Ruth, while we still had black and white and we also had colored? Or when it went from black and white, did it?
Well, you know, in the beginning, it wasn't even sound.
That's right.
They came on to tell what the person was saying. It was written on the bottom. But I can't remember that it was like that in Jax Theatre.
Down to the Halcyon, it would have been with subtitles.
But I remember the big thing was then you talked about the talkies. You call them the talkies, you know. And I just can't remember just when and how and where that started here. But when we first had them here.
Did you have someone play the piano along with the movie?
Yes. Never at Jax Theatre, but down to Halcyon. And she would play the movies, and if it was a love scene, it was real soft. Maybe it was something, and maybe the Indians would come in, and then she'd go play like this, you know, to keep up with what's going on the screen.
You'd have to be pretty good.
Yeah. And that's when there was no talking, you know, to just what you read, what came on.
Who played the piano at that theater?
Well, Henrietta Bunnell's the one I remember most, and that was, oh,
Earl Bunnell.
Earl Bunnell. Earl Bunnell Sr. is her son. Earl Bunnell Jr. would be her grandson. And then there was a girl that came here, and I don't remember, I think she was a teacher, I'm not sure. Bunny Sargent, and she played for a while.
But by the time you got up to the Jax Theatre in 1938 or 9, that was a thing of the past.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Now, what about during the war? Did they used to show the newsreels of the war before the movies?
Did what?
Did they used to show the news accounts of the war before the movies also?
No.
Well, only in the news.
Yeah.
We always had a little segment of news. Didn't we always have a little piece of news?
But always the newsreel. They called them the newsreel. There were different ones put out a newsreel that we'd have. And, well, I don't like to jump around, but I could go way back and tell you something interesting in the way.
Love to hear it.
Well, okay. This is way back before I was married, and I was working in the bank, and that was the bank then, was right across here. And that was during World War I. And George Drew had the hardware store here. And the telephone office of the girls were up over it. And any news that came in, they'd come to the telephone girls for. Well, people that had been killed,
War casualties.
Casualties, so that thank you, and things like that. And the telephone girls would tell them downstairs, and George Drew would have his secretary, he had an office girl, print it out. He would come and paste it under the window, that window, and people would gather around at morning at the time and see what the latest was that we got.
Mm-hmm.
And you just imagine how we know now what's happening in Timbuktu.
Right.
You know, think of it.
Yeah, really, it's amazing.
And people, I remember going by or seeing them there just back then, and they'd post it in the window. They would type it, and he wouldn't put it up the news. If there's any casualties, and people would rush to see. It would be mostly something to do with this part, you know, not worldwide, but just what had to do with this area.
Well, times have certainly changed.
It takes you back.
Well, so I guess we were talking about the colored movies, and we had colored movies.
Yeah. Well, I can remember when sound came, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure just when it did that the sound came, because I know about the time that this was built, because it was perfect for sound. Some of the older theaters,
Jax Theatre.
Yes, so some of the older theaters, and I mentioned the one in Lancaster, for instance. And in order to make that, they had to put drapers and things, I think, around the side, do things to fix it for sound. And so this was, you know.
So the Jax Theatre was made specifically
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
theater.
so they
really was
redo.
nice.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah.
Well, when did attendance start declining in the when did fewer people start going to the movies, Ruth?
When television
It
came
was
in.
television.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So we actually.
I could hear people tell about come down, do their shopping, and they got Saturday night, and they got to get home to see.
Oh, probably Jackie. No, not Jackie Gleason.
Gunsmoke.
Gunsmoke.
Got to see Gunsmoke.
And that was the beginning.
Saturday night was a big night for us, you know.
Yes. And
they rush home to see Gunsmoke.
That was
kind
of the beginning.
That hurt.
That hurt a lot.
Yeah.
When did you stop working there, Ruth? When? Because Charlie and Fran Hughes went back in, didn't they?
No. Mrs. Eames came up. Mr. Eames had died for a number of years before. And she was trying to take over, I guess, different places. And she came up, and I guess she thought that, and she had a mother with her, I remember, and I think she thought that maybe that they could run it and cut down on expenses, probably, or some such thing. And so I was through. I was planning to get through anyway, just long. Well, I was 62, I think, 61 or 62.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was thinking of going to California to visit Jack because he was at the language school in Monterey. And I don't know, I didn't get there, which I could kick myself for, but I didn't go. But that was the end. Yeah, I was about 62.
I was thinking.
So she took over. She and her mother were here. Up here, they weren't open every night. But I think she was doing it for a little bit. And then I don't know how she approached Charlie or what, but Charlie and Francis decided to take it over.
After Mrs. Eames. I see.
Yeah. Then Charlie died, and Francis stayed with it for a while. Then they had the fire, you know. And after that fire, she didn't open it again.
Right.
Yeah. It didn't do much. It was just in the apartment up there. But
I seem to have read that the theater closed in 1957 and then reopened in 1958.
Well, I don't remember.
And that Charlie and Francis, they went in at 1963. Would that be about right? 1963?
At the end of it?
No, I've got the end for 1971.
Well,
that was when the fire was.
1963 is about the time that I got through.
Right, 1963.
Yeah.
And then Mrs. Eames.
Mrs. Eames came on.
Charlie and
she
Fran
was here
Hughes.
She wasn't here very long.
Just a bit.
With it very long, and then she sold it to Charlie.
She sold the building.
Sold it.
Everything to Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
I see. And then that was in 1963. And then the fire was 1971, so they had it.
Mm-hmm.
A little while.
Charlie died in the meantime. He wasn't alive during the fire.
He had gone.
He'd already gone.
What fire?
And
well, we're just going to talk about that. I don't remember that fire at all. I don't know.
Oh, I remember that Jane and Dick and the children were here. And it must have been in the winter, I think, because they were probably here skiing. And, the flames were coming right out of those upper buildings.
You could see it right from your house here.
And, because I said the children better get the children out. They'd gone to bed. Jack and Dick said, get the children up, because we get everybody up. And it didn't do much of the thing, so they tell me to the theater, but she just didn't open it up again.
Well, maybe it wasn't that busy anymore.
Yeah.
No, probably not.
I think if a family could have taken it, like a family I know that could have, what was I to say?
A family.
Harringtons, for instance, somebody that knows how to fix the machines, because you always had a man come, you know. There's a lot more to it than anybody realizes.
Well, those projectors used to break down.
Somebody had to come and check those machines all the time. And you had a lot of people come and just see about your house from mouse and everything. What do you call them?
Oh, exterminate?
Yeah, exterminate. Oh, yes, yeah. Kane. With that popcorn all around, you know.
Oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah, oh, yes. So, I'm scared to death of a mouse. One night when I was selling tickets, and I went over to and I had a wastebasket here, you know, there's paper in it. And it was Sunday night, and all these people all lined up. And I went in to sell tickets, and I had something rattling, you know. And I looked, and those boys who were ushers, you know, and Charlie knew it, you know, they'd caught a mouse and put it down in that wastebasket. And I out of there like a flash. I never mind those people wanting to get into the theater. I wasn't going to sell a ticket to them. Just as there was a mouse in there.
It's such a
So
big building.
there were a lot of fun things happened.
Yes, oh, I'm sure of that. But it was TV that did us in, huh?
TV did us in.
Do you think Colebrook could support a theater today?
It might be able to, in a way, but I can't imagine anybody putting the money in to do it. But I know what it costs for machines. I know the expense of those machines and seats, lights, curtains, everything. I don't know. It's somebody, you know, somebody that was like Jack Eames was in those days. He was one that would try something.
Right.
He didn't know whether this was going to go in Colebrook, a small town, or not. But when you start to think what you've got from Pittsburgh or even into Canada, all down through here and out through Arrow and down through to North Stratford and that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got to take somebody with courage to put some money into it, that's all. A lot of money to draw.
I suppose the rental fee for the movies is terrific right now, isn't it?
I haven't any idea how much they are.
Yeah.
I understand they still play them at the Balsams. Mm-hmm. But what they do is, I guess they buy up or rent 2 or 3, keep them on hand to show them with that. It isn't the way it used to be, and show them, you know, and
right.
You know.
Of course, the VCRs would be kind of something to have to buy too.
But I've said so many times, people like Karen here and my grandchildren that watched Gone with the Wind on this VCR thing have no conception of what it was like to see it on that big screen, for heaven's sake.
That's true.
Oh,
That's true.
It's not comparable.
No. You have a VCR, I see.
Yes.
Do you watch it a lot?
No.
No.
Not much, and I'll tell you what I may sometimes. Because I have a little trouble hearing anyway, like as I told Karen. But you can turn that thing on loud enough to blast you out of the house as far as sound's concerned, but I do not get the words. People that are on the news, men that speak, and by the way, I wouldn't hire anybody that didn't take a course in diction.
Yeah.
So they enunciate, you know. And so there's so many of those shows like that, sometimes I don't get the gist of what's going on.
Right.
I guess it's what I see, but from what they're saying, I don't get it.
So you really don't watch it that much?
Not that much, no.
When
So-
if you were going to rent a movie, would you rent an old movie like Gone with the Wind, or would you?
Well, I've got Gone the Wind.
You have it, so you play that one quite a bit.
Jean gave it to me last Christmas in some kind of, and I haven't really opened it all up yet. I'm going to someday, but I mean, it's a gift thing, all packaged, in different. And it was real nice.
That's a good idea.
So I have it.
That was a good idea. Yeah.
When you stop to think of I'm going to say this. When you stop to think what Clark Gable said,
Yes.
you know.
I have that down to ask you about.
Oh, yes. And he said at the very end, and he said, "Frankly, my dear," and she said, "What am I going to do? Rat, what's going to become of me?"
Yeah.
And he says, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. That electrified the whole country. They were a damn. And now you think what they do to say today, which is terrible."
Don't you see a tremendous difference?
And they did. They took the movie people to task for having that, saying "damn."
Yes. Well, didn't they have codes of decency or something? You couldn't have certain things in the movies.
Absolutely. And strange thing, I think the same man is on now. I should know his name. Oh, I know his name so well, but I can't think of it right now. And they had a code. They couldn't play. They couldn't do certain things.
But when did they change that?
I mean, take love scenes.
Exactly.
You left something to imagination. Whereas now they go through the whole thing practically.
Yes.
And the words, because they never said the things they do now.
I don't know how they changed that on us. I mean, they didn't used to be allowed to do that. Now they can.
Well, when it became such normal conversation, I suppose, and everyday people, I think a lot of children that say these things, it's because they hear it at home.
And they see it in the movies.
Yeah,
too,
so they don't think that, So
no.
I say that, and I don't know. I shouldn't say it, but that's the way I feel about it.
Well, they certainly. I guess there are a lot of people that feel that kids go to the movies and get all kinds of ideas for all kinds of activity.
Mm-hmm.
Bad things.
Yeah.
Murder.
Do you remember some of the big movies like Gone with the Wind and Coming to Town and people trying to get in to see them?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I first saw it in Lewiston before we got it here. And there was a group of us. We drove to Lewiston, Maine to see that movie. Then we played it for about 4 days, I guess. And we had reserved seats for the first time that we'd ever reserved seats in the theater.
Was that the first and only time you reserved seats in the Jax Theatre?
It's the only time I remember. But one thing I did like about it, we had intermission. And I loved that. I just felt it was theater, And you had an intermission, the people got up and come out, and the fellows went out to smoke.
Right.
And some got up to move around and so forth. And maybe they bought some popcorn, and maybe we put drinks in that time, soft drinks. I don't remember, but I liked that feeling.
Yes, they have. Did you have intermissions other times if it was a really long movie?
I can't remember, but it seems though we
Probably
did one size, but I can't remember for sure.
If
I know we did for that one.
Yeah.
And
a long
because
one.
that was a long one for people to sit,
Right.
Yeah.
Would you say that's your favorite movie? Is Gone with the Wind your all-time favorite movie?
One of the best film movies. But there are some others. I can think of the name of them.
But that is right up there.
Yeah.
One of the
some
top.
that I can't think of his name.
Well, that
Man, it was a biblical movie, if you know what I mean. You know, some of them. No, what's the name?
I bet yes.
Hmm?
Charlton Heston.
Yes, I'm trying to think of him. Two different ones that he was in. You know,
Ten Commandments, I think.
they were fine movies.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and oh, there are a lot of good ones, you know. But I mean, to speak of the big ones, was.
Did you always follow the Academy Awards?
Did what?
Did you always listen to the Academy Awards? Were
Oh,
you
yes.
very interested?
Oh, yes.
I would think, you know, because you knew all the movies.
And now I listen to them, but I don't know any of them. You know, I don't know any of them anymore.
Well, when you were taking tickets, you did get a chance to watch the movies.
Oh, all the time, yes.
Yes.
Because we had two shows.
In the two shows.
I wanted to show, but I used to probably sit in the office most of the time. That's when I got to go. I was like an old friend, you know, I was sitting there all alone. So I had to cut that out.
Oh. Well, do we have any questions, Karen?
Yeah, I do. Just one more. Now, you said that Palmer Lewis used to be an usher. Palmer Lewis was an usher in the theater?
Palmer.
You must remember seeing some of the couples around town today. You must remember seeing them come into the movies when they were teenagers.
That was wonderful. And you know, one of the best things was that at the students, COVID kids, they were all the way to college and that. And then it would come time for vacation. They came back home, most of them on the train. You know, they'd meet each other on the trains home. But they all came to movies, and that's where they'd meet each other and so forth. And, you know, it was great seeing them. I just loved them.
You must have seen
because some of them, I tell them now, they probably thought I was an awful old witch, you know. But they come and tell me now, you know, they tell me about things, you know, and they understood it. When I go down, make them behave. Yeah.
And you'd go down with your little flashlight.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but the kids
and you had to. The adults were not going to pay their money and sit there and have the kids make it. You know, upsetting the thing. So you had to do it, you know. And one of the biggest punishments you could give is to put them out of the theater for a few days.
Did you have to do that?
Oh, sure. I can't tell this on this thing.
Just don't mention a name.
I don't want to call names, no.
Just don't mention his name, but you can still tell us his story.
But finally, out of one of these magazines, like the Exhibitor there, they had things that you could get, and I sent for a little short to put on the screen, saying that any disturbance of them like that, I've forgotten how it was worded now, you know, or they'd be asked to leave the theater. Well, after you do that, you've got to go through with it. So there was disturbance. So I went down, and they were having fun. They weren't doing anything bad. One girl sat on this aisle, the other, and they had, I don't know what kind of strings. It wasn't toilet paper, but something. Yeah, they were passing back and forth and throwing it this way and that way, just, you know. So I went down to stop him, and I hated awfully to do it, but I said, you've got to leave. You know.
I think the kids then listen to authority like that, though.
Well, I guess they do. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. One, and I was awful sorry for this particular girl. It was one of them. And I saw her last Saturday down to Mabel Sim's party. And she came and threw her arms around me, so glad to see me, you know. And I thought of it then, and I thought she didn't hold any grudge against it, you know, because I was so sorry to. But
well, you really had
you can't make any distinction of who it is. If it's somebody, you just think it to go.
She probably never did that again.
I think the hardest thing, one of the scariest things I ever did. Yeah. was one Sunday night, and the theater was full. It was packed. And this man was sitting on the left-hand side, way down within 4 rows of the front. And he was drinking, had been drinking. He was pretty tight. And he kept talking. So I went down and spoke to him. I could hear him all over, you know. So I went down and spoke to him, told him he'd have to be quiet. And he said, yeah. So I think I went down the second time. And he said, yeah, you know. But that didn't do any good, you know. So he kept talking. So I thought, what am I going to do? I've got to get that man out of here. And I went down through that aisle, and I'm telling you, my legs were trembling too, because I thought, what am I going to do? So I went down way down front. And I leaned over, I said to him, spoke him my name, I said, why don't you come take a walk with me? He said, okay. So he got right up. We walked up the aisle. We walked out under the marquee. And I said, now why don't you walk around town for a while and you feel better? He says, okay.
No problem. Well, didn't you handle it well?
I'll bet there'd been a man doing it. He might have fought him or something. You know, it might work differently.
No,
you can't
he
tell.
handled it very, very well.
But I was scared. I said, why don't you come take a walk with me? He said, okay.
Oh, that's wonderful.
A lot of funny things happened.
Well, everybody loved you there, Ruth.
Hmm?
I say all the kids loved you in the theater.
Oh, I don't know.
Yes, I think they did.
I miss it terribly because I go now, none of the little folks know me. And I used to go out and they all knew me. The little kids, the big kids, and you know. And none of them know me. No. So I miss it.
Yes,
I miss that.
Yeah. But you were. Everybody knew Ruth Walker ran the theater. Was talking to him in the library, and they said somebody'd come to get the machine.
Hey, this is Karen Harrigan, conducting the second interview with Mrs. Ruth Walker. It's November 19th, 1994, and we're in Mrs. Walker's house on Pleasant and Main Streets. Okay? Don't be nervous now. What I'm going to ask you about today, Mrs. Walker, is where you grew up out in East Colebrook. Just your young childhood days and when you went to school. Now, can you explain to me where the farm is, where you grew up?
Yes. The one I remember is what is now Dupre lives. And that is after you make a turn on the East Road. When you go into Balsam, you take a left-hand turn out of Factory Village. And we got there just a little ways. And that's the one I remember. Because I left there when I was 8 years old, so I remember just a little about it.
Now, for those of us who don't know, who were your parents?
My parents. My mother's name was Flora Woodrow. Her name was Woodrow before she was married, so she was Flora Woodrow. My father's name was Calvin Woodrow. They always called him Peter.
Now, why was that?
I don't know. I don't know. See, I don't remember, but I just remember them talking about Peter Woodrow, Peter Woodrow. I I don't know why they did that. I was too young to know those things, I guess.
Now, did you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I had two brothers and a sister. I'm the youngest in the family.
That must have been
Kind
rough.
of a mistake. I always told my mother I was quite a bit older than me. Also. My sister was 14 years older than me. So, she was the oldest.
Now, that must have been kind of rough for you being the youngest.
In a little way, because I was called that. Spoiled. I was called spoiled all the time, you know. So, but I guess they had a lot of fun.
Okay. Now, can you tell me some of your earliest memories there? What it was like to grow up there?
And I remember my father being in a sugar place. And I don't think they used really the sugar place there. But there was one day, and I remember his going up there, boiling down, you know, to make the sugar. In those days, they made more maple sugar than they did syrup. And I remember going with my brothers out, riding out around through this big, what you call it, thing for the sap and take it off the trees, pour it in, and then go back to the sugar house. And I just remember that. I used to play with them.
Did you follow your brothers around everywhere?
Well, not too much. Once in a while.
Yeah.
I used to go out to buy them when they were milking, but they turned me. They turned milk all over me. They saw me coming, you know. So, but I can't remember too many things, but any different. I do remember the sugar in town. And people used to come from town if they knew he was going to be falling down. They called him to sugar off on a Sunday. And people came, but they had to be invited, they just came. They bring their dishes and their paddles and their things. And enjoy it.
Did you used to do sugar on snow in the winter? Did you do sugar on snow in the
yes.
wintertime?
Oh, yes. I always had big tubs out, sugar outside for the snow.
Now, before everyone had a car, it must have been quite a trip to come into town.
Oh, yes. You rode the wagon or a sleigh.
And how often would you come into town?
Oh, not very often. Maybe my father did somebody in the shop, but I can't remember once in a while.
Really?
Not very often.
So it was a big thing when you got to
Wasn't
come
too
into
far
town.
either, but too far in those days, I suppose. Yeah.
What about church? Was there a church out that way, or?
Well, there's a church up farther up north into East Coast, but there's a church up there. And I used to go some night at Christmas to speak pieces, you know. Things like that. Haven't been there too much.
Now, what about school? Was
Well,
the school?
School back to the village. And that was from two great places. And the school has been removed just recently. I don't know what happened to it. It was down by the center of that village. I checked there with the pray just the other night. To ask him exactly how far it was to that school. Because he went there. Tells me, which I didn't realize. And he says 3/4 of a mile. And we walked it. Back and forth. No,
Yeah.
no buses.
What time did school start? How long was the school day? What time did you have to be there in the morning?
8 o'clock, I guess. We stayed in carriage again an hour. Walked home after. I can't remember this. I can't remember just how to do that. I brought my youngest brother was in school at the time, so I could go with him. course, I was pretty young. Take the trip.
Now, how big a school was that? Was that a one-room schoolhouse or was
One room schoolhouse.
and one teacher?
And I remember just one teacher, her name was Mary Goodwill. And she was just so nice. I remember whispering one time and I got punished for whispering. I imagine that what that is today, I whispered. And she came in the towel, put it around my ball. Put it around me, and I had to sit to that because I whispered.
You don't seem like the troublemaker type.
I don't want to elaborate on that, but I could. In comparison.
Oh, so it must have been hard for you to walk with your brother. And did he hang around with you at school, or did he kind of ignore you?
Don't let me get this eye out on me. They see how to think, oh, we can all tell about myself. I don't really too much, except I enjoyed it. There's too many very young ones there either.
So you liked school? You liked it?
Yes, I liked it.
Was there a lot of homework? A lot of schoolwork?
Never remember it. Never remember it.
You must have had a lot of chores to do on the farm. Before and after school, did you have chores to do?
My brother did help do chores. I didn't.
Really? Not even around the house with your helping your mom? Well, no wonder. Now, that must have been something when you changed from going to that school to coming into the academy when you went to high school.
The elementary school.
Oh, really?
Back in those days, we called it the grammar school. We called those schools district schools. Now then they got so they call them rural schools. When I came from there, I was only 8 years old. We came down to with command from PFU. Which I said was the grammar school.
Yeah.
I'm saying 6th grade.
Now, how did you get back and forth to school?
Well, we moved in the village.
Oh, okay.
Because after when my father died out there, then we moved to the village. That's how we came to move.
And where did you live?
Lived on Culver Street.
So you went from being
They described the house.
you went from being a farm kid to a town kid. That must have been a change.
Because I was down right down opposite the station when the trains came in. 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day. And I remember when we first moved, I sat in the window all day just watching the trains. I thought it was just wonderful. It used to be a morning train, there were 2 in the afternoon, one up and one down, and there'd be another one at night.
Did you ever get to go anywhere on that train?
Not for years. We did years ago. My father died, we went to watch him. Yeah,
That must have been fun. Now, when you went to the academy, by that time you'd been in town for a while, but there were, 17 people in your class, I think it was?
I don't know how many when we started, but this was when I was 2nd grade, and then graduated in May.
Yeah. Now, how did you like that compared with the grammar school? And how is the grammar school different than the school out at Factory Village? Were there a lot more kids?
I just thought it was very different compared to the teachers. I didn't enjoy that school.
Really?
No, I didn't. I wasn't mad with it, but I didn't try to do it.
So you had more than one teacher at the grammar school? And
Oh, yes, oh, yes. Usually the 5th to 6th grade had a teacher, and then the 7th, 8th grade had a teacher. I grew up a little bit just to say I didn't start with the 5th. in one room. Fifth and sixth grade, one room.
Fifth grade?
Fifth and sixth grade, one room. Seventh and eighth in the other room.
So you were 8 years old, and you were in the fifth grade. Now, how did that happen?
Well, it wasn't because I was so smart. I tell you, I did that. But they didn't, when I came down to go here, they didn't know where to put me. These district schools were not grading in these schools first. So they didn't know where to put me. So they gave me, cross-examined me, the multiplication table mostly. Back then on the schools like that, you said 1 times 2, 2, 2, 2, 4. You learn tables like that. So I knew it front and back and so forth. They put me in the fifth grade. Nothing I had to do. And I know for some reason I stayed with it.
You didn't have a hard time?
No, not that way. No, not really.
What about, were most of the kids in your grade older than you were? Were they
No,
old? The kids weren't
Not
old?
too much. Not too much. Yeah, something. And Cameron Dixon, who eventually was a dentist, he was in the class. And they had put him ahead. Yeah. From the class he was in, jumped to the class we were in. They used to do that with someone. If there's some really smart student, And so he and I, he was saying they just we were the youngest.
Now, what about punishing at this school? Did they punish the same way they did out there with the towel around?
No, not really.
No. What were some of the things they used to do if you were bad at school? What would they do? What were some of the ways they used to punish children if they were bad at school? What did they do?
I can't remember out in the district schools had any punishment. I can't remember it, except as I told you about the whistle. But I can't remember the principal of the grammar school at that time. She wielded a strap. I didn't get strap, but all the boys did.
Couldn't get away with that now.
And they didn't do anything bad. That's the point. Yeah. They didn't do anything bad. They might have been fooling back and forth or something. They didn't do anything bad.
Now, you said that you used to have to repeat your multiplication tables a lot. Were the lessons very hard? Did everybody work real hard at school on things like that? Was there a lot of repetition and a lot of...
Yeah, it was more like you can't do too much.
Now, how did you like the academy compared to grammar school?
I liked it. It teaches us something. Like Lucy Grove, Spencer. When I was a freshman. I was in the senior class play. I was a freshman, but I was in the senior class play. Because she needed some young girl and a boy in the play.
What was the play?
Shovel.
The shuttle. And did you have a big part in that play? What was it? What was it about?
No, I didn't have too big a part. The hammer wanted the scene of the heroine when she was a young girl. So I took that just for things. And then later on in the play, they had a hunchback boy. So I did that. Lucy said she was supposed to. She was fighting those things, and so was her mother. She was her mother come down and put on at the health center. Two of the girls in the senior class, Mary Martin, we used to call her Big Mary Martin, because there was another one looking off. This was Big Mary Martin and Hawthorne School. And they took the book to shopping. And they dramatized it themselves. They did another picture.
Now,
However, to the hero, he was handsome.
was that put on just for the school or did the town?
Hudson Theatre.
Whole town.
Oh, everybody. Oh, yes.
Were you nervous?
Really big deal.
Were you nervous?
No, loved it. Loved it.
What other activities were you involved in at school?
Oh, I don't know. We always had something for what do they call it? The end of the school. Parade, everything, you know.
Commencement.
Can't think what they call it. You know, now I guess I don't know. I don't see it. They used to parade each class. Bring up and presented something. I don't know the special day. Maybe it was a ship because we were in the freshman. I don't remember from there on. Oh, there was always things going on.
What about sports for girls back then?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Did you play?
We used to talk with the girls' community team. Never had a team, but I had all the time courses. But we used to go down to South Hall, get in. Some one minute jam to get in the front row without the horse fence. And we had songs, we had chairs, and we had no cheering section. So we had to do play, you know, that everybody cheered.
Okay. Now, where did they hold dances for the kids the way they do now, or was that a town activity? Nowadays the high schools hold dances for the kids to go to. Did they hold dances like that back then? No.
They usually have those, we used to have the junior prom, the senior hall. Just all held the town hall, which trying to do with them. They used to spend it a lot. Oh, it's just old people. I say old, they don't mean old. Senior people would go to see the hall for one thing, you know, just to do something. They spend days decorating. Just like that, we would do the senior hall. That's the only dances like they have connected with the school.
And that was parents went also to that, right? It's not like
We always had chaperones. We always found the town hall one corner. We always fixed that up with a carpet, chairs, and everything around. The chaperones. We always had chaperones.
So it wasn't like now where if a 16-year-old wanted to go on a date with a boy, she'd go. It wasn't like that back then. If a girl and a boy wanted to see each other back then, they couldn't go on a date like they do now, could they?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
I guess so. You probably did.
What about you?
No. You never seen walking to school hand in hand. Never anything like that. I thought it was amazing. Not because you thought it was wrong, but just didn't do it.
What about dating though? Back then, I know it wouldn't be like now where my sister goes out on a date, my father never even sees the boy. It wasn't like that then, was it?
Guess not. I don't remember dating like that through high school.
That was later.
I never dated through high school. Somebody might walk home with me. They might walk home from church with me. We might walk home from a dance with me. And we didn't. They didn't take a little dance.
Now, for the graduation, that was held in
Town hall.
the town hall. That must have been something.
And back all that was always in the church. They separated. We do one thing, we have to took turns. It's always in the church.
Do you remember your graduation? A lot of family? Did your whole family go?
Oh, I think just my brother and sister.
Do you remember decorating the town
Oh,
hall?
my brother didn't know he wasn't here anymore. I think he wasn't. Oh, I had the prophecy. Oh, but yeah.
You did? What was that like? Now, as far as the graduation, was there as much room in that town hall now, or as there is in the gym now with the whole town fit in there? No.
But you could hear everybody. But sometimes you can't help it. And another thing, graduation, we had a speaker, the way they should do now. But we always had a speaker from the way he might be the head of some college or some school somewhere. So just not just somebody local. This is kind of a repeat, what I did.
That's okay. Now, you were talking about a class trip that you took to Washington?
Yes. Let's see, during the Easter vacation, the senior classes always took a trip. And it was senior classes from all over. We'd meet at places, schools in Massachusetts and everywhere. So it's kind of a thing to do. So we went down to the station and took the train. All the people, everybody come down and see us all. And we drove the train from here to Boston. We went from Boston to Fall River. And then Fall River, we took a boat. It was called the Fall River. In fact, I think there was a song made one time about the old Fall River. We went from Fall River by boat to New York. And then we went to Washington. And I can't remember that coming back to New York, or whether we did New York at that time. We went to theater in New York, the Hippodrome, which was the largest theater. I think I know it was the largest in this country, but it was the largest in the world. And we went there, and then we were taken around to Chinatown and different places.
That must have been quite a trip.
Yes, New York. Saw the Statue of Liberty and we came sailing the harbor of New York, And then we took the train from there to Washington. I think we stopped to eat at the station or something, as I remember, in New York. And it was a place where we all went to eat. And I can never have them. Something I said never came before. I said, I remember it now, I forgot it now at times. Not too long, but something else. Just something wonderful. But another thing at that time in New York, and I've read about it, I don't think they have it anymore. I can't think of it now, but they called it. You went at this place to eat, and different things were in an old glassed-in place. You dropped your money in. There was a name for it.
Automat. Was that an automat?
Automat is right. The automat. You look, there's a piece of pie at the Twister Sanders to this event. You dropped your money in there. I locked the place and took it out. Oh, we thought that was great.
Now, this must have been the first time that most of these people had ever been away from Cobra. Was that your first trip away?
Except going to Berlin. I can remember they used to have track meets, and some of our boys were just great, on different things. And I remember still I went to Berlin to track meet down there. And when we went into Berlin, I thought that was the biggest city I'd ever hoped to see. I was just thrilled. So outside of that, we had big ones. Maybe some of the other girls had, maybe some of my other friends had. Ruth Trask, maybe students, maybe places.
Now, what kind of places did you go to in Washington?
Everything to be mentioned. We couldn't live in the White House because it was 1917 law didn't declare. They didn't love anybody in the White House. But outside of that, she went through her captain. So many things that my city says that I read that time. It's sad for me.
That must have been something being in Washington when the war was on.
Yes. We went to, we took a trip to Poland. I laughed because the woman was with us. And we just asked, we was like, kind of ashamed, we weren't ashamed of fathers. Because other people could go on the trip if they wanted to go on the trip. And this lady who went was a nice lady, and he was Foster. And that's what Foster Terrence is not his name. She lived there. And she was with us somewhere with this big hat on. So she said, well, I suppose we're now sitting up above the man. So that's why I almost said it. We went up to George Washington.
Oh, Mount Vernon.
Mount Vernon. We went up to Mount Vernon.
Now, how long were you in Washington?
Well, I don't think we were gone on the trip only a week. We went there too many days. So maybe we went back. And I don't know, sort of woke up on the way or something. I think my young brother was living in Stoughton, Massachusetts. And I stopped up there, so I had they came in there.
Now, you talked about your brother teaching you how to drive. And you were driving when you were 16, you said? Was that just in a farm truck? Or?
They didn't stop. There weren't many women driving, in those days.
Oh,
But this, my older brother down in the house.
Did you have a hard time?
Women?
Yeah.
No, not really. I remember his shooting to me, turn off the clock, I don't know what he meant by killing that. I remember that so well. And of course, I didn't have a car to drive afterwards because he was difficult. When I got the license and everything, I got the Jax Theatre.
Well, there must not have been too many cars around for a while anyway.
I had a license ever since. Up until this last year.
Now, when you were growing up on the farm and in town, if the kids wanted to do something fun Saturday afternoon or even after school, what kinds of things did they do? Especially in the winter, was there a lot of sledding? And you hear kids now say that there's nothing to do.
We just go skate. I remember they used to give you ice over quite a lot. Yeah. But now, I guess I mean, the whole thing is that whole people down to they used to was a lake or anything, they used to ice over a lot. And we used to say, we used to go sliding called Pat's Hill. That's we used to go down Bridge Street. I don't remember what I snowshoes, but I know we used to think it was.
Now, you said, did you ask about sleigh rides? Did you say there were a lot of sleigh rides or no? kind of funny though, isn't it?
Years ago.
So okay, there we are. Okay. Now, as far as the sledding though, I think what makes me curious about that is because now the kids say there's nothing to do, and yet back then you always found fun things to do, didn't you?
Yes, you had sleds. I remember I didn't have these skates at the time except the kind you clamped on your shoes. And it's just fun. We went out and did something, you know. We went sliding, as I said, I was more so the weather time.
What about in the summer?
Getting drinks, orange area, things like that. But fun, I can't should remember. There's always a game of kids around where you live. And as you were growing up, you played all sorts of games. And had something going on whatever. I used to love going to shows and going home. And the kids get together for the show for the kids. And
Well, Karen may not know that you've got your wonderful needlepoint and your handcraft stuff that you do so well. Did you used to do like embroidery and
when I was young,
and how about hooking? None of that till
that's why I was really married.
after that. But you didn't make any little samplers like, no. Yeah, because we'll have to get into your hooking.
My mother was a dressmaker and I was schooling bread.
So you didn't sew.
I didn't know.
No.
I didn't like it. And I
Still
don't
don't,
like
no.
it. I love to do embroidery.
Yeah.
Those kind of things.
And she's so good at that.
Now, the time when you grew up, the time when you were a child and in high school, was quite a time for the nation between getting cars, electricity, phones. Can you remember those things coming into play? Can you remember, the first cars and the first phones and the first...
A little bit. I can remember that it was on the phone. My father died. He was so sick beforehand. And we had a nurse there. And she had already been promised to some people that the woman was expecting a baby. And so they called and it was time for her to come. The woman was having a baby. So she had got to leave. And when those people came out after her, they came in an automobile. So he said, "There's an automobile." And I don't know that I've said this before or not. But back in those days, and I remember hearing my folks, I was a kid, my mother or somebody say, the worst things may go all right on a lighter way, but then they'll find all these hills, living in cars. Yeah. Of course, we didn't have a car. We had electricity, phone. So,
They must have been terrible on the mud and the snow. Did they have a hard time?
you didn't mind it, you were happy, everything was fine. We didn't have much, I know, but we didn't realize it. You just, everything was fine. And then after we moved in here, she began to see more cows. I can remember some of the first cows that people had, and I go the woman would be there waiting. They were like open cars. If you were caught in the rain, the man got out and fastened all this stuff all around the sides, side of the places to snap them on. They weren't closed in the way they are there. You do remember that.
When did your family finally get a car?
My family, as far as my mother was concerned, never had a car. So I said my brother had later years, my brother had and my mother-in-law had a car. So they would control the
Ruth, you mentioned your father being sick. Could you tell us just a little bit about the doctors and hospitals and sickness back then?
No hospital.
None at all.
No hospital. And he had pneumonia. He had typhoid fever.
Oh.
You don't very often hear of that.
But back then you did.
And the only thing they could think of was that the water pipes had frozen during the winter. And in the spring, when he thawed them out, they said that he put a copper glass under that and drank some of that fresh water that came out. Now, they always thought that might have been the cause of his having typhoid fever. And of course, you hardly hear of that today.
No. But you did back then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ruth, did you have these childhood illnesses too, like scarlet fever and diphtheria and
I had
mumps?
Measles?
measles, and I think I had the mumps.
And the good old chicken pox, probably.
I think they're chicken pox. And I had the mumps. I got mice.
That must have been a fairly common thing, though, especially in a small school like that. Yeah. I guess people didn't take as good a care of themselves in those days either.
Well, that's true. People didn't take showers constantly like today. Everybody is constantly showering. But no.
And I can't remember on the farm we didn't have a bathtub.
No.
Well, as Jane said once, nobody smelled because everybody smelled like.
Yes.
Girls didn't have, and that's another thing, girls didn't shampoo their hair every day.
No.
I never thought of such a thing. Because your hair was long and it was braided. Mine, I could set on it. So I could set on. And it was braided. Like braids.
But nobody really did. It's so different. People didn't shower and carry on all the time, did they? And everybody was the same. Right?
I mean, that's not when we used to go have a great time going Diamond Pond. We all got soaked in good shape all day.
Were you just a little kid when you'd go out to Diamond Pond? Were you just a little kid when you'd go? No, that would be late.
High school age.
And it came into, like, a lot of families built camps out there. That would have been like in the...
Yeah, we used to have awful good times up there.
Yeah, mid-1900s, somewhere in there.
Stevens just had a camp. And Sally Hill's folks had a camp. So we had good times.
Now, as far as holidays like Christmas and Easter, holidays like Christmas and the 4th of July, what were those like compared to now?
Well, I don't know. When I was a kid, I always had my stocking. We never put up a Christmas tree. I don't think most people did in their homes then. Because I think they went to church, tree, church. And had firecrackers and these little small ones, and then there was a little tiny ones that went up. And each family had some of their own, and they used to put all there.
Well, back then, Ruth, the kids didn't have as many toys and things, did they? I mean, like today, I mean, you were lucky if you got a present in an orange. Am I right?
Wonderful.
I mean, that was a good Christmas.
Wonderful.
If you got a doll and an orange. Yeah. I remember my mother telling that.
So what kinds of things would you get in your stocking for Christmas?
I remember my sister, she always wanted to play some joke on me. And as I told you, she's quite a bit older. And back in those days, the age difference made quite a lot of difference, you know. And she found a potato somewhere that looked like an animal with legs, and she stuffed that in the rest of it. But nobody else hung the stock in the family. I was the only one. That was after we moved down here. And I used to go around with my friends after Christmas, and they had just left a lot of days spread out. Cold bed. And I thought it was just lovely. I just loved it. And funny part, I wasn't envious. Because I didn't have the same. I wasn't one bit envious. And I thought it so many times.
Yeah.
I didn't have, they all had bicycles. I didn't have them. I learned to ride Bill Steve's. She was made up on the street. I learned to ride.
You learned to ride? Did she teach you? Your friend taught you?
Well, you kind of taught yourself. I used to go to the station and stand up on the platform and get on the bicycle from there. Oh, that's all I could do.
I bet you had the prettiest clothes in town, though, if your mother was a seamstress. I bet you had pretty dresses.
Well, yeah, made over. Nearly everything was made over from something.
Pretty.
I think even my junior prom dress was made over. She used to go down to the Lombards and the different ones and different places and sell them and make things. I had an awful pretty dress, but it was made over.
Yeah. That was all right.
That was all right. Didn't bother me.
No.
I don't know why, but
Now, what kind of, you talked about your junior and senior prom, what kind of music would they play? Was there a town band that got together, or?
no, not usually. Not usually. Not for things like that. I had to call Dunbar's orchestra from King and an orchestra from Berlin or somewhere. They did have a good orchestra here for a while, but I can't remember who was playing when I was in school or anything. They had a real.
What that Remick band, was that before
Before
your day? But that was a well-known band, and then
that was local.
Local. I've always heard about that one.
But later on, Leon Hicks, who was a good pianist, and different ones together had different bands. She used to play around. They went to Molson's to play. When I say the Molson's, they went to the Health. They had a dance there. I remember once a week. And it was top floor. But not the hotel.
No,
side.
no.
The administration building or the dormitory or the health boss or something. She used to play there. I used to go there. I wasn't in school then.
There you go.
Yeah, she's going. Yeah.
Okay.
Ruth, when you graduated from high school, what did you do?
I went to work in Public National Public Family Savings Bank before that I sent us high school. And I was, at the time, I was the only girl It was Mr. Currier who was the cashier. They call them cashiers. Now they call them presidents. And also George Weeks, who was the teller, and myself. And that's all there was. And we didn't have ledger posting machines. You didn't have any machines. I think there was one adding machine.
There was an adding machine.
But you set up to this desk. And so I had a slant. And you had this great big book that was called Boston.
But it was like to keep your books.
We kept everybody's deposit page and name and pen and ink. You put on the deposit, you put on the checks, you added the deposit, subtracted checks, and carried out the balance, and added up the whole sheet every day. Anyway,
Right up in your head.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm awfully glad. I'm awfully glad I had all that. I'm glad I didn't have all these things at the time, because I saw such a change. And then Mr. Currier finally, I don't know how it happened, somebody came and he decided to buy the ledger posting machines. And I was the first to use that.
You ran
And
those.
that's where you put on, people had their own cards, their own statements, and you did it every machine. And then which was great. And so there were a lot of changes like that. I saw.
Now, how is it that you were the first women's liver in Colebrook?
Well, that was a few years later. I look back now, wondering how I had the courage, but I guess I was kind of upset. There was more work in it. I can't remember how many. But I don't know. Mr. Finley, John Finley, was one of the directors, children directors in the building. And he had a man working for him because he ran the express office. This man did work for him then. But he got him a job to come into the bank to work. And he was a nice man. He was older than I was, of course. But and anybody came into the bank for that, they didn't. They did the routine things that you learn when you go in. So he sat there and filed checks and did things like that. While I was doing lots of other things, working on notes and things. And besides that, I had to take all the letters because I had taken shorthand in school. So there was always letters to write. Well, they paid him at the time probably almost twice as much as what I was getting. And that's what's funny.
And you had been
And
there
I
for
said, so, well, I was curious. And not only that, I complained at that time, the cashier was Mr. Crawley. It wasn't Mr. Crawley in James. I blamed him in some ways for this part. This man, after he sat there and done that at 3 o'clock when the bank closed, he'd open on his hat and walk out. And that's when you did most of your work after the bank closed, And I think, I look back and I blame him that he didn't tell him. He never said a word to him. And that, so I was pretty upset about it. So finally I said, look, it was during the summer, and I said, look, they're paying that man, the price they're paying him. If I should tell the price today, I'd have to guess at it. But it would sound like peanuts today. Probably like $25 or something like that. I think maybe almost $25. That's a lot of money then. And I said, look, that man in here, they're paying him that. And I said, they can pay me. I didn't ask that much. I can't remember whether I said 20 or not, which was big for a girl making no back most things. And I said, look, are they going to pay me that or I leave it? And I said, I want you to bring it up at the next bank meeting before the directors and let me know, because I'll be looking for another job. And she said, you don't need that Ruth. I said, we do. And I went home, told my mother, and she had a fit. Thought I was terrible. And I thought, well, they can take it or they not.
They did.
Oh, I guess I said to him, I said, just I don't wear long pants. I said, I can't earn that money. More money. That's the way I put it. And that's why I said, I think I was woman's liver. So I never heard of it. We never heard of women's liver. But it wasn't right. And I still say it isn't right, but they do the work, you know. So.
That's a wonderful story, though. You were. I think you were the first liver.
Did that cause any problems for you? Did that cause any problems for you? Did you? No?
So I went in like a married. Nowadays, I mean, back then, so many women that they got married, they left and everything like they were. And I wish I had the way things were. I think John and I had a place alone by ourselves or something, and I had we came here and lived with each other. And it was like housework more for her to do. So I just left, stopped working.
And that was in this house? You came to live in this house?
So I didn't work again. I went back to
But that was really the way it was, wasn't it, Ruth? When you got married, the women stopped working.
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
You didn't see many women work in those days.
No. Well, didn't some of the teachers have to stop work after they got married?
Yeah.
They wouldn't let them.
It was a ruling for a long time.
Yes. Yes.
One teacher here in town, you know, got married secretly and they never let it know. They know.
Yeah, because that was an awful
She
rule.
would have lost her job. Yeah. Well,
Before we move on to that, this bank that you
No,
worked
that
at,
isn't going.
Yeah,
Is
yes,
it? Can you see it from there?
it is.
Yeah. Okay.
The bank that you worked at was in the building that's Collins Video now, right? It's in the building that's now Collins Video.
yes.
And it was called what?
It's called the Coburg Guarantee Savings Bank and the Coburg National Bank.
Okay.
And there was a Farmers and Traders Bank then too.
The directors at that time, I can't remember all of them. I think Bob Van Dyke was president at the time. And there was some locals, some stores down.
Was the Farmers and Traders where it is now
Yes, it was when I,
at this time in history?
John Ennis was the cashier there.
Hit me.
Now you want to ask her that question?
Ruth, do you think back then people were more self-sufficient, more energetic, hardier, and ate a lot more than we do today? I've looked at the menus that people used to have, and they had apple pie for breakfast and donuts with butter and all these things. It's incredible what people ate.
Well, I guess they had to.
But they worked hard, and they had to.
Of course, I wasn't in that category. But I can remember, as I said, you see, the men would go out and do the chores and come back in for breakfast. And of course, they had, they had potato and,
Meat?
well, meat, some, I guess. And of course, as I say, I can remember my mother making butter. They had this machine-like thing. But they didn't have, but they did the washing like this.
I know it.
For the washboard?
I never did, I have to tell you, but they did. And hang it out in baskets full of ironing, and they used to iron the sheets and everything. Today, it's no iron.
No.
In fact, I wouldn't buy anything.
No.
And, no, I don't know how they did it.
I don't know how there were enough hours in the day for them to do it.
And then they'd sit perhaps in the evening, do their mending, or they'd do a little sewing, or do some knitting.
Mm-hmm. And many had large families.
Yeah.
You know, six children wasn't many then.
Well, they used to have, in fact, I got the big boiler. They used to always boil their clothes. I mean, the white clothes, you boiled them, and they weren't.
Yeah.
That would be clean if you didn't. You wash them first, and then you boiled them, and then you rinsed them, and then they hung them out. I guess I was thinking that.
No. But it was a hard life. But they all seemed to thrive on it, and everybody seemed happy.
And I'm ashamed to say, I know I'm ashamed of it, but I never had a washing machine either to this day.
You have never had a washing machine, Ruth. Right? Is that
when
wonderful?
I first came here, they had somebody coming in. Mr. Walker had somebody coming in. He was having a shop now to do the washing machine. Did this, now that. Then I had to ask him why I didn't do it. Then I don't know what happened after that, because all of that was really taken out of my hands, something I had anything to do with. And they found somebody and the washer went out. So it went out from then on. And I knew when I did the kitchen over out there, I thought once I should have put in. They had a patent washing machine, so I should have put in. So I didn't. My personal things, yes.
Yeah, no, by hand. Yeah.
Sheets and pillowcases, towels and things. They still go out.
They still go. Well, that sounds pretty good.
Still a poor spoiled brat.
I don't know. I think you worked hard. You went to work at the bank and you raised two wonderful kids.
That's right.
And
You were a career woman back then.
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
All set?
Well, it's been delightful. I've enjoyed hearing all this. This is Saturday afternoon, December 10th, 1994. Karen Harrigan and Ellie Gooch are talking and taping an interview with Ruth Walker at her home at 2 Pleasant Street. Well, Ruth, here we go again. This is our third go around on different subjects. It seems to me Colebrook has had more than its share of fires and floods and every other thing. Maybe you could start about the fires. You know, on Main Street. Wasn't there a terrible fire right across the street here from Mrs. Walker's house? That was before your day.
Not in my day.
Not in your day.
Before my day.
Before your day.
Mm-hmm.
Then, were you around when the Monadnock house burned? No, that was way before.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And then the only bad one, you never really seen any really bad fires.
No, there were small fires. I just barely now you mentioned. I remember. I think it was in what we call the Royal Store was at the time. I remember that no great damage, you know, like going through a block or anything. And then later, I remember there was a fire up around near Hill Store. I remember a fire up there, but nothing like
those early fires that really wiped out this whole Main Street, I guess.
I can remember hearing about it and hearing Mrs. Walker saving the fire over here. They used to wet sheets and hold them up around their house, to try to prevent it from getting over here, you know.
And I guess it worked. Yeah. Because it didn't come over here.
That's nothing I remember.
No, I didn't think you did.
Before my day.
Absolutely. So that will take care of the fires. How about we'll get to the floods? Well, I guess you might know.
That was 1929.
1929.
Yeah.
Okay. And Did you know that there was going to be a flood?
Well,
Tell us.
I was upstairs in bed.
Upstairs? Yeah.
Jack was 2 or 3 days old. There's no hospitals there, as you know. Babies were born like that. And there used to be a hospital over here. It's now Nugent's filling station. That's where Jean was born.
Over there.
So when people ask me where Jean was born, I say she was born in the filling station. But it was Kerr's hospital side. Well, after that was gone, they didn't have any. So Jack was born here in the house. And it was just, he was only 2 or 3 days old during that flood, and I was in bed. And of course, as you know, they didn't let people out of bed in those days. They kept you in bed for 2 weeks. And Charlie, of course, had taken off to go over in St. John's or somewhere on some kind of a business trip that he had, so he wasn't here when it came. And Mrs. Walker, we heard about it because I think Fred Norris, they called him Skinny Norris.
Right.
Apparently somehow heard about it out east and came down through notifying everybody that dam had broken and the water was coming. And so people had a little bit of notice while it was coming. And Mrs. Walker thought it'd be safer for Jean, which is only 4 years old.
She was 4.
So she took her way down to my mother's, way down on Colby Street. The flood came before she got back. And so I don't know how she got in. I don't know. But anyway, because it did an awful lot of damage in this town.
It did.
And one of the strange things is that it came into stores, all basements, all up and down the street, ruined things in their basements. And there's a little house where Hebert's is right there, and I could hear that crushing, the buildings and stuff crushing against that bridge and just smash and take them down. But here's a strange thing. Eula Cummings, who lived right on the bank, right over here on the bank, wasn't this much between, from here at the fireplace, wasn't this much between her house and that. So everybody, I don't know who, of course, I didn't know all this was happening, but they all came and they moved everything out to save everything. She never got a drop of water in her house, not a drop anywhere. And we got water in our garage, way up on the thing, and people, but see how strange that it's not a drop of water in her house.
Isn't that?
And so then the next day I thought, oh gracious, I'll be looking out the window here, we'll see all sorts of things. So I watched for a while, and we truck after truck taking out mud from the stores and shoveling out mud and everything, and finally it just made me sick. I couldn't watch it anymore.
Were you alone while Mrs. Walker had gone? Oh, did you have a nurse?
Oh yes.
As a nurse staying?
Well, yeah, I had to tell you that.
Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned it. She was a great, tall, beautiful Swedish girl, big, tall, blonde Swedish girl. And she came from Brockton, Massachusetts. She'd never been here before. But she knew the doctor, and he had her come to stay with me. And she's one of those people, she'd come through the door, she made you feel good because she was beautiful. So when this happened, Levitt Gould and another chap, and I cannot think of his name, he was somebody that was just here for a short time, and they came up to the head of the stairs to move me out. And she, of course, didn't know anything happening out here, but she hadn't been here, And I always think how smart she was. She finally straightened up, because they said, well, shall we take her out on the mattress? And she kind of straightened up. She said, is the water going to come up to this top story? They said, well, no. She says, I guess we'll stay right here. So
they let you stay right here.
Which is smart. And but I do remember them coming upstairs to move me out.
Well, Ruth, was that the time that particular flood, the one when it took out the bridge over on Parsons Street?
The bridge?
Yes.
Well, I think so.
I think it was.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And they felt that maybe helped save things, I guess. Yeah.
It did an awful
lot of damage.
all over everywhere. And afterwards, when people went out to see where that dam broke, it looked like 2 blocks of things. It must have been. They didn't do a good job in the beginning. They must have, whoever built it must have done a cheap job, you know.
Well, that was the dam out at the Balsams?
Yes. It looked just like it was before you get to the Balsams.
Just
when we used to take the road, they changed the road. But when we used to take, right after that happened, they changed the road around. You could still take the road up through, but we went out to see it, and it was just this slab across the end. It just broken right in the middle.
It was. Well, did it happen at night or in the daytime? Did the flood happen at night or in the daytime?
It was in the daytime.
In the daytime, so it wasn't scary.
Yeah, it was long. Yeah, it was a long afternoon, as I remember it. Because it did, because it got dark. The lights were off. Because it took the lights off.
It took the lights off.
And it hadn't. And I had an awful lot of flowers. And I guess George Drew, he was in the hardware that he had given me so far. The lights went out. And we had candles around, and I said, well, you think there's a way to know. Laying in bed.
Well, but there's nothing scarier, though.
So I told Jack on the phone, and I was talking, and you girls are coming in again, and I said, well, you're going to be in the history, because I'm going to say you were born in the flood, so.
But that was a scary time, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And Colebrook has had, several bad floods.
Jack had just been born.
Just a little baby, my heavens. Well, since they straightened out the river, Ruth, the Army engineers came and they dug out the Mohawk, and we've really been much better off.
Haven't had much trouble since then, because every year there was high water.
Ice jams.
Everywhere, ice jams and high water, and people did get, I know the theater we used to get water in the basement over there in the theater, and like that. But since they really fixed it, I don't think anybody's been bothered.
Well, didn't they used to have these men come to dynamite the ice jams?
Oh, they had to. We used to dynamite right down here by Howard's restaurant. That's one of the places they used to dynamite down there to let that ice jam through.
Yeah, and that was quite a tricky job. Those people that were able to do that, dynamite, it's a real skill, they said. Yeah. Well, it's
tough country we live in.
We've got to be. Well, Ruth, the First World War. Now, I was trying to figure out, that was 1914. You weren't a very old little girl when that war started, were you?
Did that start in 1940? The United States wasn't in it.
It wasn't?
That early, was it?
I don't know.
I remember 1917 when we went to Washington, my class.
Your class trip.
They wouldn't let us in the White House because war had been declared.
Yeah.
So I don't...
Well, perhaps we weren't. Maybe we weren't in there then. And that might have been before we got in. And then the war ended in 1919. Yes. So you must. You certainly remember your class trip in the war.
Yes,
very well. Yeah. Now, was your husband in the war?
My husband and my brother.
And your brother.
And I can remember. I remember when boys were leaving to go, people knew about it. Everybody went down to the station. I say everybody, but a lot of people went to the station to see them off, knowing they were going. Of course, some were drafted, some
volunteered.
And whatever way they were going to go. If they knew about it and they were leaving, people went down to the station to see them off.
See them off.
Yes.
I bet.
And it happened the same way when you knew the war was over and some were coming back. If you heard that somebody was writing, people went down and met them, Just patriotic.
Yes, everybody sent them off.
Yes, you didn't think.
Yes. And as Art Colbrook had a lot of men in that war. I was looking in Dr. Gifford's book today, and
my brother was living in Stoughton, Massachusetts at the time, so he went from there, and Charlie went from here, and Max, my brother, was in the engineers.
He was an engineer.
And they were the ones that went in and dug out the foxholes and got those ready for the rest of the army to come in, rest of the army soldiers to come in. And so he was gassed and whatnot.
He was gassed?
Yeah, never got over it.
Never, no.
And, I don't know, Charlie was in something, supply company, something like that. And overseas.
Overseas.
Yes, all this was overseas. And I should have kept more things, I guess. But
I think he kept a lot.
Yeah. But I know when Max came back, I was still working, and of course, at the bank. That's after that. And if there was any casualties from this part of the country up around here, the telephone operators, girls, would get it, and they were upstairs over where the hardware store is. That's where the
Hicks Hardware.
And they would get it, and then they would notify and let down, and the young woman that worked for George Drew's secretary, she'd print it up and tack it in the store window, and everybody would go in the morning to see the news, what the news would be, if there was any new casualties and so forth.
I wondered how you found out.
I imagine that you get everything
on the television.
But that's the way it was. But I remember after my brother came home.
Is this Max?
Max, and he had a room next to me, and of course I frightened me, of course, but he'd holler and yell in the night. He didn't know he was doing it. He was asleep in there, but he'd holler and yell, in the night. Yeah.
Was
people forget?
Was the Red Cross? Did you have rolling bandages and all that kind of thing for that war?
I didn't at that time. I guess they did.
Some women did.
But I didn't. But later on, must have been another part.
The second one.
Yes, I worked down here. We used to do things. And then they used to have a place, Columbia, a little shack up there, like on the hill, where you took turns watching for airplanes. I remember Sally Hill used to go.
That was the Second World War, wasn't it?
I guess that must have been.
I think it was.
Took turns. We used to go up there.
You'd all take turns.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've got a thing somewhere that tells Ben or something tells about it, We used to go up there and sit there and watch in case there was an enemy plane coming.
Well, Ruth, this George O'Neill that the American Legion Post was named for, did you know him?
I didn't know him.
You didn't know him.
That was First World War too, you see.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the American Legion was started.
That was, First World War.
First World War.
Yeah. And I
didn't know him.
No, I wondered. He was 24 years old when he got killed. I was reading that. And that's who the American Legion Post is named after. The American Legion Post is named for him.
For him, yes. He was the first one killed.
First to go. Do you remember when the war ended, the First World War, the Armistice Day? Were a big time.
I don't want to get the two things confused.
It's hard. It's awfully hard to keep them straight.
I think it must have been that one, because I remember Mrs. Walker, I wasn't married or anything. All those women that age, they were out in the street and everything, because her son was over there. Because I didn't know him then,
No, but her son, that was Charlie.
He called me a kid. He was quite a bit older than me, so They didn't look at me.
No.
But so I remember they did quite a lot. I remember more about the next one when they had D-Day.
Right.
That, and everybody was out, and everybody rushed to the town hall, and everybody danced and cheered and hooped and hollered, and it didn't stop for anything. Everybody was, in no time, it was a regular celebration. You didn't have to stop and plan it and put it on and get your orchestra and things. Something happened. Yeah. And they had a great time.
Well,
I don't know what it is. There's more patriotism, there's more feeling, there's more something. I don't know what it is.
In general, or between the two wars, do you mean? They had a really big time. Was that VE Day or VJ Day? Or ES1?
Yeah,
and everybody had big parties
in the street.
And dances.
They had a parade just like that, had a big parade, and you didn't know they were going to do it till that morning and whatnot. And I remember we did the putting the flag on.
Oh, Iwo Jima. I don't know. Oh, is it not?
In Japan, you mean?
No. The fellows that put the flag on, I can't sure what's the name of that?
I know where you mean. The three fellows, you always see them in standing there, putting it up.
Oh, you mean an honor guard.
But it was on a particular monument.
Yeah. So there was Sally and myself and Francis and Joe Nugent. It took 5 of us, I think, to look at the picture of the planting
the flag.
Planting the flag.
Well, this was in a parade. Was this in a parade?
In the parade, and that's what we did. And I remember at the time we had a kitchen stove out here at the time, and in the back, and I opened up the back covers to get some stuff, face and all.
Oh, yes.
Thank you so much. We all lived up, and it's Suribachi. It sounds like something like that.
Was it Iwo Jima?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, the raising the flag in Iwo Jima, but I think the name of that thing was Suribachi.
Mount Suribachi.
Yeah.
Yeah, the island of
Iwo
Jima.
So it was the raising the flag, and that's what we did in the parade. We did it that morning, so quick, because you didn't plan ahead.
No.
They had quite a parade, I'm telling you.
So the boys all came
marching home. I wonder today how much people get enthused to get out and do things. Maybe they would.
Oh, I have faith in the American people. If
they had to,
if we were really threatened in our own country, I think people would. Well, Ruth, you stayed home. You were on the home front. Do you remember about rationing, gas rationing, and food stamps and all that kind of thing?
I remember the food stamps. Of course, I didn't have any cars, so I
didn't have to worry about that.
No, but I do remember about food stamps and going into Royals, and you could get so much, meat, and get down the counter there, and somebody ahead of you, And yes, I remember that.
And sugar, was sugar ration too? Sugar?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Well, a lot of that food was, though.
I think Dr. Swale kind of had charge of that over there. And I honestly don't remember how we got stamps.
I think everyone was maybe allotted a certain number according to the number in the family. Something like that.
Yes, and things were rationed.
Well, do you remember the blackouts? Did you have blackouts in Colbert? You had to keep your curtains drawn. I thought somebody said something about that they used to have to keep their curtains drawn, and they had somebody going around checking.
Well, maybe they did. I was living way down there.
You wouldn't have.
I don't seem to remember that.
Right.
I don't seem to remember that too much.
Right. Well, then, so we were very lucky. We were victorious in that war, weren't we? And then comes another war, the Korean War, and your son He was in that one. Jack was in the Korean War, wasn't he?
Yes, in Vietnam.
And he also was recalled for Vietnam. Well, he was in the service anyway, because he went.
Yeah, he was still in the service all
Yes.
the time. So.
But some of these fellows that were in the Second World War were recalled, like Eddie Owen, to go back in for the Korean War.
Yeah. He was back. He went down to Guantanamo Bay. Edmund did.
Quite a few of those fellows had to go twice. That was a hardship. It was a real hardship, and we did lose. I understand two men got killed in Vietnam. But and then the Vietnam War.
That was miserable.
It was quite an unpopular war, wasn't it?
Oh.
You felt badly for those that went and those that didn't feel they could go.
Yeah.
It was tough. Such a contrast.
Not much sympathy for those that did everything they could to avoid it, you know.
But the town,
I don't need to mention.
The town was really kind of split, though, over it. I mean, a lot of people felt that we shouldn't be.
Well, that's right.
And even the clergy felt.
Yeah. I think a lot of people felt, and I think they probably were right, that we were there.
Yes.
And
right or wrong,
I
we were there.
kind of said to go, so, you know.
But some of the fellows did go to Canada and Sweden and places too, because they didn't believe in it. And then, of course, the most recent Persian Gulf War. Right now, we don't seem to have.
No, I had nobody in there. Jack was out for them. 27 years, I mean. Not counted West Point. They don't count that on there. Oh, really? No, they won't count that. They ain't come to figure up on there. Retirements.
They don't count.
They battled that, I guess, I've heard for some time. But they don't count that. But they're there. They're sworn in when they go. Right. They're sworn in to the army when you go.
But it seems to me, Ruth, a year or two ago, they honored yourself and Neil Tillotson, the auxiliary and World War veterans.
For him. Yes, honored him, yes.
And
he's the oldest living veteran in World War One that belonged to this legion. And I don't know, perhaps the only one.
Someone is saying that they thought he might be the last of the ones in the area that were, in World War One. And I remember they had a nice party for you folks. They gave you and Neil a really nice party.
Well, that was only because I was only living member that was a member of the auxiliary chapter, or starting the chapter. The auxiliary to the American Legion.
You were what, the last living signer of the charter?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, the American Legion building was kind of tied up with this house almost, wasn't it? The American Legion building that the fellows built, the American Legion Hall.
They didn't build that.
They didn't.
That's a barn that went to this house.
It is that it? Okay.
And the American Legion, when it first started, was up over the hardware.
Hicks Hardware.
And it was different then. There's quite a lot of space, and the Legion was on one side, the auxiliary had rooms on the other. And finally, for some reason, I don't know why, they had to get out of there, and they went up to a little house between the
wilderness?
Between the wilderness and that little house up in back there.
In the old Remick block building?
Just the Remick block. Between the Remick block. But you drive up in between the little house up in there.
It's still there, I think.
Yes. And it was there for a while. And then this became vacant. It had been used by, John Finley, I guess, had American Express place there and whatnot. I don't know different things. and it was due to Charlie's effort that they urged the Legion to buy that, which they didn't have any money at the time, but they did, and they bought it, and they gave them something to work for all the time, to pay for it, which was good. And they renovated and did an awful lot of work and made that a nice place. The auxiliary was upstairs, and the Legion was downstairs. It was nice.
Did your brother put those lovely fireplaces in there, Ruth?
We built 3 fireplaces, one in the basement, one on that floor, and one on the top floor. He did all the hard plastering and all that all around. For nothing, for love of country,
whatever.
But the fellows at that time all worked too, because it was the time when a lot of them didn't have jobs. It was a hard time for all of them. And then people gave things, to go. People in the town gave things, like I think the London family gave things, a fireplace, to go around the fireplace and things like that.
Yes. Well, Ruth, was that spot where the old barn was that the site of the first schoolhouse in Colebrook?
I've heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard that this house was or something. I don't know whether it was over
here
there
somewhere.
Yeah. I've heard that. And of course the little house that I call where Bob Cummins lived wasn't there.
It's right next to the Mohawk River, that little
wasn't
house.
There. And when John Finley had that building, he bought that little place just way over the academy somewhere. He bought it and had it moved over there because that wasn't there. And that was the barn that went to this house.
With this large house.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ruth, what happened to the American Legion? That isn't, it's no more?
Yes, it is, but they just struggled, Just struggled. Now, as I understand it, the last time I asked, they had 100 members.
100?
But they don't turn out to things.
They just pay their dues?
Yes, they belong, and they're glad to belong. They have 100 members.
I think it's interesting. Karen's grandmother and grandfather was so active in the American Legion, in the auxiliary.
And,
I'm in the Legion now.
The Colebrook Post? Karen.
We've got a meeting Tuesday night, actually.
Isn't that wonderful? Maybe they'll get it going again.
I hope so.
Maybe they will. Well, does Bob Shaw does he own that building that was the American? He rents?
No, they still got it.
No,
and he rents it from the Legion?
He rented it from the American Legion.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He just rents, and the Legion still has the deed.
Mm-hmm. They still own it. They rent it. And they fixed themselves a place down in the basement, and it just makes me sick every time I think of it. But they have a hard time just keeping going,
Just to keep the building up and...
Mm.
Well, Ruth, when did you and Charlie get married? I'm kind of changing the subject on. I've gone right from wars into Charlie and you. Yeah. When did you and Charlie marry?
1921.
1921.
June 4th, 1920.
Goodness sakes. Yeah. And somebody told me that I should ask you about the roads. That Charlie and Harry Marsh used to roll the roads with a snow roller. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yes.
I know.
They didn't write it. They didn't write
themselves.
They were in the business somehow, and I don't remember much about that. But I don't know. Dr. Gibbons always telling a big joke about that. You probably heard it. How they these people plowed up in above Canaan or up somewhere, and a good pint of something was a good payment for them after they got through.
Something like that.
Something like that, I don't know.
But it was really quite a gadget, that snow roller, wasn't it? It kept the roads open.
Yes.
And it was a godsend.
Those great big snow rollers.
Right. Then, women got the vote August 18th, 1920. Women could vote. Do you remember voting?
I was 19.
You couldn't have voted in that first election.
No.
Darn.
After I was married, Charlie, people came to Charlie to collect a poll tax. And he said, she wasn't old enough.
So you couldn't do that. Well, now I understand that President Warren Harding came to Colebrook in 1921 and was up at the Monadnock House. And was that a big time?
Big time.
Parade?
And you've seen pictures of that, haven't you?
I saw them.
Yeah.
Yes, in Colebrook yesterday. There's some good ones. And that must have been something.
It was. And he was up there, and of course there's a big crowd. Yeah, that's something for the president to come here. Although we did have one president pass through since then.
Who was that, Ruth?
That was Ronald Reagan. And he thought, before he was president, and he came through, and I never could understand why they didn't do, somebody didn't get busy and do something more. I think he came through from Berlin, and maybe stopped at the Balsams. They came to the Colebrook National Bank, and we went down there, and the lobby was full, but there weren't too many people. I shook his hand, he shook hands, and he was, his canvassing band, he wasn't president. But they never took him up through the street, no people turned out or anything. I never could understand it. But,
well, through the years, we've had so many presidential candidates come to Colebrook.
Yes.
Not too many were elected, I don't think. Best is Kefauver, how do you pronounce his name? He came to Colebrook, they say.
I was trying to think of the young little girl that presented Harding with the flowers. Grown up and everything, and I don't dare say, because I'm afraid I'd make a mistake. I should know. Some little girl
gave him
presented
a bouquet.
With the flowers. I think it might tell from those pictures. But,
Then, another thing I wanted to ask you about, Ruth. Frank Baldwin was quite a figure here in the North Country, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And he's the fellow that built the Bluebird Pavilion, the dance hall.
He built the Halcyon Theatre. He had the Ford Auto Company at the time. Imagine downstairs having a theatre up over a garage, which was just fine. And so that Baldwin Auto Company was downstairs, and Halcyon Theatre was upstairs. And it was a nice theatre, movie theatre. And then later he built the Bluebird across the river.
Did you ever go over there dancing?
Did I ever?
More than once.
Yes. A beautiful floor, crystal ball.
Maybe Karen doesn't know where that was.
It seems to me the first real hot dog I ever had was there, because they had a little, on the side, they had a little refreshment like stand, and you went out there and you could get a good hot dog and coffee and whatever. And then, of course, they had orchestras from away. Mel Hallett, Paul Whiteman didn't get up here, but some of those famous orchestras came, and I couldn't help thinking the way it affected me when you go and they get over here where the cold will turn, and you turn and look down on them. It seems that was all lighted up and all the cars. It just seems you were going into a different different area than Colebrook, or this is Colebrook, but I'm in this North Country. It was because people came from everywhere, and and a lot of the older people, I say older, but they're older than, like Mrs. Walker, Miss Lombard, her friends would go over, and all the seats and everything around the side. They used to love to go over and sit to listen to music and watch the people dance. It was nice.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, just where was that located?
Where was it located? Do you know where Willard Pike built his house over there?
Oh, Martha Cross?
Martha Cross?
Right. Was it on the other side of the road from?
No, it's on the same side. It's on the same property.
It's where Richard and Martha Cross is. You know,
Now, this is over in Leamington,
it's
right?
in Leamington over.
The Colville turn she talks about is it's a left-hand turn, and Mrs. Colville's house is on the right, and you come down over that hill
You
down
just
there.
just go around the turn, and the Colville place is kind of on the hill, and you go down, and I think there is one other building there on the left, and then next place was there.
Okay.
On the left-hand side of the road,
It's on the
going
left-hand
north.
side.
Yeah. Okay.
It isn't too far from.
No.
Probably a couple miles.
You've probably seen pictures of the Bluebird in that book. Yeah.
And then it came to a sad end.
Yes, it did. And, you know, Frank Baldwin finally, he got a little, I don't know what I want to call it.
Yes.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
And he married some young gal, and he used to get on the floor and dance and try to, which wasn't like him. And then it got to the point, I don't know really what happened. For the wife, I don't know when she disappeared, I don't know. But his son, Harry Baldwin, and Charlie,
Your husband, Charlie,
were big conservators, because they didn't think he was able to look after his business. And that was before that Burn Ring thing. So after that, of course, we used to go to every dance over there anyway, because they were looking after things. And then it burned on the night of the Fireman's Ball.
can you believe it? It's unbelievable. I've always heard that.
So the firemen were over there having a ball.
Yes,
and it burned?
but I think it was later after the dance was over. I actually don't know how they figured out what started it or anything. But another thing, before that happened, and before Frank Baldwin kind of had to give up looking after it, he built on a dining room, a big dining room, you see, and then that just didn't go. There wasn't enough going through here to do that. His little place there in the end was just fine for dances like that, but then he built on this dining room, and I don't think that ever. I never was there or anything. I think that was for tourists or people passing through, and because we didn't have enough
To support something like that. Yes. Well, he really had like a nervous breakdown, didn't he?
Sort of.
Like
yes.
that. Yes. I can't quite get the time sequence. Was Prohibition on when the Bluebird was busy? I can't get that in my thoughts. Well,
Don't seem so it was.
It wasn't.
I think that was later.
Later. Mm-hmm. I couldn't.
I think that was later.
Yeah. Well,
but I don't remember having any troubles over there, because they always, like anything you hear, dance or anything, you had to have policemen around and everything. But I can't remember ever heard of any troubles. And they came from Maine and all over to go to the Bluebird.
Well, you were having Maine bands.
Yeah.
They all came.
And they had a lot of nice dancers.
Well, you always were known as a very good dancer. I've heard that. Always heard that. Well, then Frank Baldwin, did he go from Colebrook up to Pittsburgh?
Well, he came from Pittsburgh.
He originated from
yes.
Pittsburgh.
And that store there, one store was his, and across from the store was that nice home that was his.
Right there on the corner as you're going to go in downtown Pittsburgh, go off Route 3 onto Route 145, that big white house.
Yes. And I can't remember whether he had a clothing store here for a time or not. It seems to me he put in a clothing store here. I won't be sure.
Yes. We've been talking some, Ruth, about Scott Carby. Do you remember Scott Cabby?
No.
You know, he was the...
I knew of him.
You never knew him?
Never knew him.
Oh.
But of course, he was a painter.
Mm-hmm.
They had the place up on the hill out here. Nice place.
That's where Clarence and Marilyn Frizzell live now.
That's
at
where
the
you
top.
start to go up in Columbia.
Yes.
Place. But his daughter, what was her name?
Jessica.
And I remember her. And later, years ago, when Jean went to school in Boston, she ran a place for girls going to college or different places around there, you know. And Jean stayed at her place.
Jean stayed right with there with Jessica Cabby?
Yeah.
I wondered how he happened to come to Colebrook, Scott Cabby.
I don't really know.
Well, it's very interesting.
I noticed one day when I went down to the bank, I didn't notice the last time, they had a big painting up there of
Miles Gray.
Yes, and he did that, you say. And I knew that painting from back over here, and I wondered what had happened to it. I hadn't seen it for years.
Well, it just come upstairs. You hadn't missed it because they hadn't been upstairs for a while. No, but they've just brought him up upstairs. Yeah.
So I was surprised, and I went in one day and I thought, oh, I recognize this.
They said that. I guess actually Ruthie painted quite a few.
Of course, he did one of Iva Drew. I think that's in the library.
That's right, it is. Yeah. And someone said that he did one of Fran Marshall Hughes, of her mother.
Oh.
Somebody said it. I don't know where it is.
I didn't know that.
I had never heard that. But I think there are quite a few out there that people don't know about. Yeah. He just came in the summer, I guess.
Yeah.
Karen wants to know about Prohibition here. Do you remember much about that?
Prohibition?
Yeah, what it was like here in Colebrook during that time.
We'll give you a few minutes to think.
Well, the thing I remember the most is...
Okay.
The thing I remember the most is you hear of the ones that were bootlegging and coming through. And we used to laugh about it because we used to go to ride on, like on a Sunday night. People would come from Maine and everywhere to go up to the halfway, they called it. Excuse me. You know, where they could drink. And so many of them have an accident on the way home. Charlie was in the garage space, so we'd go out queuing around, wondering there's going to be an accident, you know. Most always over here in the Coval turn, somebody would have an accident. We used to joke about that. But so I remember that, and there used to be a lot going to what they call the halfway.
Now, where was that?
Well, that was up between Canaan, where Canaan and Canada meet up there somehow. I've been up outside the building. I never was inside, but I remember being up there one time or something. That was the halfway, and they could go in there. You see, half the building was in Canada and half the building was in the United States. That's why it was called the halfway. And so then I remember one night Charlie got a call. He was, of course, running the Baldwin Auto down here, and got a call from, I didn't know too much what was going on, but he got a call about some bootlegger was coming through. He thought they were after him. He wanted to drive in, hide his load. And I guess Charlie didn't let him in the garage. You know. So, I don't know who it was, I didn't know about it at the time.
Well, that was really quite a spot, though, wasn't it? For quite a long while. But
I mean, there was, several around here that we knew the people that were doing it, some of them, You didn't see them doing it. You didn't know. You just heard it, so you didn't know. But I mean, of course, people did that, bootlegging, you know.
Well, and I guess you'd have to say it still exists.
But that
smuggling.
proved to be a wrong thing.
Crazy.
It proved to
try
be
do
wrong. Of course, it did.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, did the halfway eventually burn, or what happened to it?
I don't know.
I don't either. I wondered whether it burned or fell down, or
I don't know.
it went for a long while.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my yes.
Yes, it did.
I remember the night the theater opened. I was pretty disappointed when we got through. I thought, well, they're all going to be here. Everybody's going to have a great time. We're going to celebrate.
This was the Jax Theatre, when the Jax Theatre opened?
So they all took off for the halfway. I said, no. They kept insisting I said, no, I'm not going to go. I said, been this long, I'd never been there. I'm not going up there and celebrate. This is the place to celebrate right here. And I wouldn't go.
Good deal.
I'm so disappointed.
You were disappointed.
Yeah.
You thought you'd have a little party in Colebrook.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
well, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, halfway must have been going then, because they wanted to go to halfway.
Yeah.
So it must have been prohibition back then.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's very interesting to talk to you, Ruth. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Well,